Welcome back. The battle to stop COVID-19 vaccines for adolescents is far from over. The ACDP and its partners are in court seeking to stop the rollout, but Section 27 says the group has brought discredited experts to court. Let's get a response now to that criticism and find out where the case is now from the party's lawyer, Bongani Lutuli. Bongani, thank you very much for your time. Your response to Section 27, which is a friend of the court in this particular case, they're saying the experts that you've brought forward to testify in court have no business commenting on epidemiology.
Well, we're surprised and disappointed at these comments by Section 27. It's part of the rhetoric that's been going on by the vaccine apologists, and that's a problem, where anybody who's giving contrary indications and contrary opinion on the efficacy and the need not to vaccinate, given natural immunity, they're labeled all sort of funny things. These are clinicians that we're talking about. One of the arguments that's been brought by the minister is that these two witnesses don't have any business because they're not involved in the manufacturing of the vaccines. But when you look at Dr. Karim himself is not involved in the manufacturing. So the question is, what gives them the right to say we can't comment? What they failed to do was to rebut the authentic glaring evidence in the study in UK that had been brought by the two witnesses. And the argument seems to suggest that just because it's UK, not the South African jurisdiction, therefore we should overlook what they're saying, and they can't talk in the context of South Africa. That's absurd. I think Section 27 would do well to just deal with the substance of the issues as opposed to playing by the gallery, so we say.
So what are these experts that you brought from the UK saying, and why them? Why try to prove your point by referring to the UK?
Firstly, people are scared out there to come out because they face occupational detriment. You know, they face ostracization when they speak out in the field. There's been a lot of censure. These are two brave scientists, these are two brave clinicians who've come up and they've done their own studies. And what the studies are showing, which hasn't been effectively rebutted, if at all, is that there's no need to vaccinate adolescents. We know that they enjoy immunity, and even there's a low mortality rate from them. There's a low hospitality rate. So essentially what we're having is children, dare I say, being used as human shield. It defies all logic, it defies all scientific ethics, that you can't say somebody else must take medication to protect somebody else. That's human shield, and that's completely unnecessary. And that's been the argument that they're bringing. And of course, the whole efficacy as to that we are seeing, what we're witnessing, certainly even after we launched the papers in November, is the excess deaths of children. That's all unraveling before our eyes. It's going to be interesting how the court interprets this, because human beings are human beings and their genetics are the same, whether you are in UK or wherever. That science can't simply be ignored.
Well, I don't know if you remember, with the Delta variant, we did have quite a few children in South Africa who ended up in hospital and dying from COVID-19. So it's not all children who automatically have immunity. There are some children, Mr. Lutuli, for instance, who have underlying conditions, and it would make sense for them to be vaccinated. Do you not agree?
Well, one thing we should put the ACDP's argument into its proper context is that ACDP is not saying no to vaccination. That's not the ACDP stance. ACDP is saying no to vaccination without informed consent. So ACDP is saying those parents who want to go and vaccinate their children because they have got comorbidities, very well, but don't disarm people from engaging robustly, and parents using their prerogatives to say my child shouldn't vaccinate. That's the first thing, and that's sort of mandatory, and we're totally against that, because there are a lot of various reasons why parents would not want their children subjected to vaccines. Secondly, what are the numbers, Marcel? What are the numbers of children that are dying because they've got comorbidities? We know that this is a trial. Now, if it's a trial, you sample a population. You don't say all children must be vaccinated, because we don't know the efficacy. We'll probably know in the next 10 years or so. By then, damage will be done. I'll give an example. We recently had a Pfizer report that came out. Pfizer wanted to censor the report for some 80-odd years. If they were bona fide, they would come out and tell us that the 1,000, over 1,200 or something adverse effects that are caused by vaccines, here they are, public, then you make your own opinion and decide on that. But they decide to ignore that. SAPRA comes on record and say, oh, we are shocked. We didn't know there's such a report. We'll investigate with WHO. This is not new. This is what the ACDP has been saying, that other side effects are myocarditis. It's been on record, but people are feigning ignorance, and we cannot gamble with the lives of our children or any citizen of this country.
Where is it mandatory for children, adolescents aged 7 to 12 to get vaccinated?
We understand.
You mentioned mandatory.
Yeah.
Where?
We understand. If you look at Section 21 in its proper context, Section 21 says you need to use this vaccine on an experimental basis and registered as opposed to Section 15 registration. Now, it's been rolled out, and what we are seeing as the ACDP, because we're on the ground, is we are seeing that at schools, parents are coming and they're saying our children are either vaccinated, or they say the children are going to be vaccinated. So in its practical effect, forget the cosmetics that SAPRA is dressing this legislation on. It's having an effect that you should not consent, and that's been the outcry. There's no parent that comes wherever in our constituency that has come and said they've asked me whether we should vaccinate a child. I said yes, or I said no. It's rolled out, and that critical part of informed consent goes against Section 12(2)(c) of the Constitution, and that for us is unconstitutional. That for us is irrational, a decision to be made, and it won't stop until the court has put a plug on this.
But you do agree that people getting vaccinated does work?
I'm not convinced. I'm not an anti-vaxxer.
Okay. Are you vaccinated?
I speak, not that it matters.
Are you vaccinated,
personally.
Or is this just a job?
I'll give you my opinion. I've chosen not to get vaccinated. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I vaccinate I travel the continent. I have a yellow fever vaccine. I don't believe in flu shot. But I've taken vaccinations before. My child has been vaccinated. So I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm against the lack of transparency around the content of the vaccine. They're mum about what is there. The lack of accountability. If something happens to me, what's going to happen? It's not enough. Manufacturers are coming and say, oh, we won't take responsibility. So that's a problem. So I have a right to bodily integrity. I can choose what goes in my body or not. If you're not going to tell me what the adverse effect is, if it's going to harm me, or perhaps in the long run it's going to change. We're seeing people dropping dead in large numbers.
And that's because of the vaccine?
Amongst others.
Where do you get that?
Amongst others. You're seeing the reporting is quite biased. When somebody drops dead, we're seeing soccer players, we're seeing a number of people
but
suddenly.
Where do you get that? Maybe you can help the media report.
No,
You're saying they don't report,
right? Ignorance. We know what happens. Let me give you an example.
No, if somebody comes to the media with
Sergio Aguero, you have it there, but you as the media are also part of some bias and some narrative that we don't know about. And as a media, there has to be responsible reporting and transparent reporting. Balanced.
No, I need to go back to people dropping dead and the media not reporting that it's caused by the vaccine.
Let me give an example. Sergio Aguero, who used to play for Manchester, went overseas. He was a big activist for vaccination. Suddenly, Sergio Aguero can't play, is forced to retire early because he's got a heart condition. Media reports it as heart condition, but the reality is that guy was fine, but he took a vaccine, and the side effect, it's common cause now. We can't
debate. So you've spoken to the doctor that diagnosed him with this heart condition, and he said it was caused by a vaccine.
Well, that's the thing. That's what we're saying, that there's going to be censure around this whole thing.
But you see, now you're doing exactly what you're saying we shouldn't do. You're saying that we failed to report that the heart condition on Sergio was caused by the vaccine. So
you failed to interrogate. That's my argument. You failed to interrogate.
We can interrogate, but you're saying it as if it's fact. You're saying we failed to report it because it was definitely caused by the COVID vaccine.
I'm inclined to take these number of sudden sharp rise in people's heart condition as fact. A UK publication, I forgot the source now, but credible mainstream, last week published a report that Moderna and Pfizer most likely are the leading cause of heart attacks. Now, you read between the lines. From whether you started around September, when vaccinations became available, I may be wrong with the months last year, but when it became available, suddenly people are having heart attacks. And
no,
the question is,
it could be that it was underreported. You can't say these things as fact. It could be that heart attacks and the rate to which heart attacks are happening were underreported, and now we're hearing more about it. But it doesn't mean prior to that.
I cannot agree to that.
Okay,
are you disputing? Are you disputing what this mainstream, if you have seen it at all, what this mainstream report in UK says? Are you disputing that? But
no,
the question, so if you're not disputing that...
I'm not going to dispute or deny that. Sure. The interview here is not about me and what I think. It's about this court case.
Yeah.
What you're saying is that this report indicates that there's been heart attacks, and you asking me why am I not asking myself why there's more people dying of heart attacks? So my question to you is, how do you know that this is more people dying of heart attacks, or it was underreported before?
No. When a report is explicit when a report says Moderna and Pfizer, names it and says, are the leading cause of heart attacks, the question as a responsible media is then it becomes, so these heart attacks, the sudden rise in heart attacks and people dropping because of sudden illness. We're seeing reports of mysterious illnesses. Nobody wants to mention
and
heart
this is because of COVID-19 vaccines, or you're saying the report mentions two.
Remember now, we can't argue that myocarditis is also part of the leading adverse effects of the, once we concede that point, we need to now interrogate whether, I'm not saying every cause of a heart attack is directly linked to the vaccine, but I'm saying there's an underreporting, and in fact there's a disregard of that science, because somewhere it could either be media is captured or anybody is captured to report responsibly. No. And that's the problem. If
you bring us the proof at ENCA, we'll help you try and see what it is.
Documents on record? Which one do you
No, we don't want the reports. We want you to give us the doctors that we can speak to who are doing these reports so we see it.
We'll channel you.
We won't.
Yes, Dr. Craig.
There's no point in ENCA saying the UK has a certain report that says this. We need to be able to also interrogate
Fair enough,
that.
Masego.
But thank you very much.
Here's Dr. Craig, here's Dr. Makala. These are people you can interview.
I would love to speak to them. Thank you very much for coming to speak to us. That is the advocate and attorney representing the ACDP in that court case against the vaccination of adolescents. That was Bongani Luthuli.